If you think betrayal is loud, dramatic, and easy to spot, then you've never met a woman who plans in silence. Because sometimes the most dangerous move in a marriage isn't shouting, it isn't fighting, it isn't walking out. Sometimes it's paperwork. Hidden paperwork. And this is the story of Sebastian Cole Beaumont, a man who trusted quietly, loved deeply, and almost lost everything because he believed stability meant safety. But what his wife didn't know was this. Sebastian understood numbers better than emotions, and numbers don't lie. Sebastian Cole Beaumont was not a loud man. He didn't argue in public. He didn't post motivational quotes online. He didn't believe in dramatic displays of power. At 38, he had built a respected financial advisory firm in downtown Toronto, the kind of office with glass walls, clean desks, and clients who spoke in calm voices about large investments. He wore tailored navy suits, polished brown shoes, and a silver watch his father gave him years ago. He believed in routine. He believed in order. And above all, he believed in loyalty. His wife, Olivia Beaumont, was the warmth in his structured world. Where Sebastian was quiet, Olivia was expressive. She filled their Oakville home with soft lighting, fresh flowers, and gentle laughter. She remembered birthdays, anniversaries, and the small details that made life feel human. They had been married for 12 years, and to anyone looking from the outside, they were the perfect balance, logic and emotion, structure and softness. They had one joint household account, separate personal accounts, and complete trust. At least, that's what Sebastian believed. He never checked the joint account obsessively. Not because he was careless, but because he trusted the system. And he trusted her. Every morning, he woke at 6, showered, dressed in a perfectly pressed suit, and walked into the kitchen where Olivia would already be preparing breakfast. Sometimes oatmeal, sometimes eggs, sometimes just toast and fruit. She would smile and tease him for working too hard. He would kiss her lightly and remind her that stability required effort. It was simple. Predictable. Safe. And that's why he didn't see it coming. The first sign wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with a confession or a fight. It came in the form of a brown envelope. One Tuesday evening in early autumn, Sebastian came home slightly later than usual. The air carried that faint Canadian chill that signals the end of summer. When he opened the door, the house felt normal, but Olivia was sitting at the dining table with a brown envelope in front of her. The moment she heard the door, she slid it quickly into her handbag. Too quickly. Most people would have asked immediately. "What's that?" Most husbands would have reacted. But Sebastian didn't. He noticed. And he said nothing. "Long day?" she asked, her tone light, almost rehearsed. "Productive," he replied calmly, placing his briefcase by the hallway table. He poured himself water in the kitchen and let his eyes briefly rest on her handbag. He didn't question her. Powerful men don't react without information. Over the next week, nothing exploded. No arguments. No tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Just small changes. Olivia began taking phone calls in another room. She changed her laptop password. She visited the bank branch instead of transferring money online like she usually did. Each change alone meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern. And Sebastian's entire career was built on recognizing patterns. Then one Thursday afternoon, as he reviewed quarterly reports in his office overlooking downtown Toronto, a notification appeared on his phone. A withdrawal from the joint account. Significant. Not devastating, but unusual. His expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. He opened the banking app. There had been smaller transactions over the past month that he hadn't paid attention to before. Administrative fees. Processing charges. And then he saw it clearly, payments to a family law firm in Mississauga. His chest tightened, but his breathing remained steady. Divorce? No. That didn't make sense. There had been no screaming, no threats, no emotional explosions. Their marriage had been calm. Stable. Predictable. But sometimes calm is preparation. He didn't call her. He didn't confront her. That evening, as he removed his watch in their bedroom, he spoke gently. I noticed a withdrawal from the joint account earlier. Everything okay? Olivia paused, just slightly, before smiling. Oh, that. I'm just reorganizing some things. Simplifying accounts. Her voice was smooth. Too smooth. Sebastian nodded slowly. Of course. He didn't press further. Because pressing too early warns the other person. And Sebastian wasn't ready to warn anyone. That night, while Olivia slept peacefully beside him, Sebastian stared at the ceiling in the darkness. He replayed the envelope. The hesitation. The law firm payments. He wanted to believe it was nothing. 12 years of marriage create habits of hope. But hope doesn't erase evidence. At 5:30 the next morning, he slipped quietly out of bed and sat at his home office desk. He opened his laptop. Logged into the joint account. Downloaded 6 months of statements. Line by line, he reviewed every transaction. Groceries. Utilities. Subscriptions. Then, more payments to the same law firm. Larger amounts this time. His jaw tightened slightly. He leaned back in his chair. If she was preparing something, it wasn't emotional. It was strategic. And strategy, Sebastian understood better than anyone. He didn't wake her. He didn't slam the laptop shut. He stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and stepped into the shower. The warm water ran over him as his thoughts aligned. If Olivia was planning to serve divorce papers, she believed she was ahead. She believed he was unaware. She believed she controlled the timing. But she forgot one thing. Sebastian Cole Beaumont built his life reading numbers. And numbers speak louder than secrets. At breakfast, Olivia seemed perfectly normal. She smiled. She asked about his meetings. She kissed him goodbye at the door. He studied her expression carefully. Was there guilt? Was there anticipation? He couldn't tell. But he felt it now, the shift. Something had changed. And once a man like Sebastian feels a shift, he doesn't panic. He prepares. As he drove toward downtown Toronto, the skyline rising in the distance, he made a quiet decision. He would not confront without proof. He would not accuse without clarity. If there were divorce papers hidden somewhere in his home, he would find out. If there was a plan forming behind his back, he would uncover it. Because betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it hides in envelopes. Sometimes it hides in bank transfers. And sometimes, it underestimates the one man who understands that every movement leaves a trace. And this time, the bank records had already started speaking. The moment Sebastian Cole Beaumont noticed the shift, silence turned into strategy. Because once a man who understands numbers begins to look closely, he does not stop halfway. He does not guess. He confirms. And what Sebastian was about to confirm would change the way he looked at his own marriage forever. The morning after he downloaded the 6 months of bank statements, he walked into his office with the same calm expression his clients were used to seeing. Navy suit. Clean shave. Controlled posture. No one would have guessed that his mind was running calculations far more personal than market forecasts. He closed his office door gently and opened the statements again on his desktop screen. He didn't skim this time. He examined. Date by date. Transfer by transfer. Small payments first. Consultation fee. Administrative retainer. Documentation processing. Then larger amounts. Structured withdrawals. Not random. Not emotional spending. This was planning. Strategic planning. And the name of the firm appeared repeatedly, a family law office located in Mississauga. Sebastian leaned back in his chair, fingers lightly touching his chin. Divorce was no longer a possibility. It was a direction. But something about the pattern unsettled him even more than the word divorce itself. The timing of the transfers aligned with asset growth in his business. Each time his firm closed a profitable quarter, a slightly larger amount left the joint account. It wasn't just preparation for separation. It looked like positioning. As if someone was gathering financial leverage. He felt a wave of disappointment move through him, not anger, not yet, but disappointment. 12 years of loyalty. 12 years of shared dinners, vacations, and plans. And now this? Still, he refused to let emotion take control. Emotion clouds judgment. Judgment wins outcomes. He picked up his phone and called someone he trusted completely, Daniel Crawford, a senior accountant and longtime friend. Daniel answered on the second ring. Sebastian, what's going on? Sebastian's voice remained even. I need you to review a series of transactions for me. Quietly. There was a pause. Daniel understood tone. Send them. Within an hour, Daniel called back. These aren't casual payments, Daniel said. This looks like someone setting up a structured legal strategy. There's also a secondary savings account connected to the joint account. It was opened 3 months ago. Sebastian's grip tightened slightly on the phone. In whose name? Olivia's. The confirmation landed heavily. Not because he didn't suspect it. But because suspicion becomes fact changes everything. He thanked Daniel and ended the call. He didn't move for several seconds. He simply stared at the city skyline outside his office window. Toronto looked normal. Cars moving. People walking. Life continuing. But inside him, something fundamental had shifted. That evening, when he returned home, Olivia was arranging flowers in the living room. Soft music played in the background. The house smelled like vanilla candles. She smiled when she saw him. You're early. Meeting got cancelled, he replied smoothly. He stepped closer, studying her expression. Still warm. Still composed. But now he could see it. The carefulness. She was measuring her words more than before. Watching him subtly. As if she too was calculating. They ate dinner together. She talked about a new cafe that opened near the lake. He nodded and responded naturally. But his mind was processing a different reality. If she were preparing to serve divorce papers, she would need timing. And timing meant she wasn't done yet. Later that night, while Olivia was in the shower, Sebastian walked quietly into the home office. He opened the filing cabinet where they kept important documents. Insurance policies. Mortgage papers. Tax returns. Everything was neatly labeled. Olivia had always been organized. He searched slowly. Methodically. Second drawer. Nothing. Third drawer. Nothing unusual. Then he checked the small locked compartment where they stored passports and legal certificates. The marriage certificate copy was missing. His heartbeat remained steady, but the truth was becoming undeniable. He returned everything exactly as he found it. No signs of disturbance. No misplaced folders. When Olivia came to bed, she seemed relaxed. You've been quiet lately, she said softly. Just work, he replied. She reached for his hand. He allowed it. But something inside him had already stepped back. Trust is fragile. Once cracked, it does not sit the same way in the heart. The next morning, Sebastian took the next step. He scheduled a private consultation with a corporate attorney. Not a divorce lawyer. A corporate protection specialist. If Olivia was preparing legally, he would protect financially. At the meeting, he laid out the facts without emotion. The transfers. The new account. The missing certificate. The attorney listened carefully. If she files, asset division will depend on documented ownership and timing, the attorney explained. You need to secure your business shares immediately. Sebastian nodded. Discreetly. Papers were drafted that afternoon. Business structures adjusted. Investment holdings reclassified under long-term strategic protections. Everything is done within legal boundaries. Everything documented. He wasn't trying to punish her. He was protecting himself. That's the difference between revenge and preparation. When he returned home that evening, Olivia was sitting at the dining table again. Another envelope in front of her. This time, she didn't hide it immediately. She looked at him carefully. As if deciding something. Sebastian, she began slowly, do you ever feel like we've grown apart? The question was gentle. Too gentle. He removed his jacket calmly and placed it over the chair. Why would you ask that? She looked down briefly. I don't know. Things feel different. He studied her face. There it was. Testing the waters. Preparing the narrative. If she could establish emotional distance first, the legal move would seem justified. He responded carefully. Marriage changes over time. But different doesn't mean broken. She nodded, but her eyes revealed calculation. Later that night, Sebastian returned to his office once more. He requested a detailed transaction trace from the bank, including in-branch visit logs. The next day, confirmation arrived. Olivia had visited the branch 3 separate times over the past month. Each visit aligned with larger transfers. She hadn't just been consulting a lawyer. She had been preparing funds beyond what he initially saw. That realization didn't ignite anger. It ignited clarity. This wasn't an emotional decision. It was structured. Planned. Quiet. And if she believed he was unaware, that belief was her greatest mistake. On Friday afternoon, Daniel called again. There's more, he said carefully. The secondary savings account has been linked to a third account under a different financial institution. It's recent. Very recent. Sebastian closed his eyes briefly. Amount? Daniel told him. It was significant. Enough to suggest preparation for separation before formal filing. When Sebastian hung up, he felt the final piece settle into place. She wasn't just preparing to leave. She was positioned to win. That evening, he drove home slower than usual. The sky was turning a deep shade of orange over Lake Ontario. He thought about their wedding day. The promises. The simplicity. He wondered when it changed. Or maybe it hadn't changed suddenly. Maybe it had shifted quietly, like the first crack in ice before it breaks. When he walked into the house, Olivia was setting the table for dinner. 2 plates. 2 glasses of wine. Everything looked normal. I made your favorite, she said warmly. He smiled slightly. Thank you. They sat across from each other. Soft lighting. Calm atmosphere. A picture-perfect marriage from the outside. But beneath that surface, strategy was unfolding on both sides of the table. Sebastian watched her carefully. Not with suspicion now. With understanding. She believed she was ahead. She believed she was controlling the narrative. But she didn't know that every move she made had already been traced, documented, secured. And as he lifted his glass of wine, he realized something important. The man she thought she was outmaneuvering was not emotional. He was analytical. And once an analytical man confirms betrayal, he does not collapse. He constructs a countermove. The moment Sebastian Cole Beaumont stops hoping he is wrong. Because hope is gentle, but evidence is firm. And by now, the evidence was no longer whispering. It was spoken clearly. Over the next few days, Sebastian did something very simple, but very powerful. He became normal. He did not change his routine. He did not become cold. He did not accuse. He woke at 6. He dressed in his tailored suits. He kissed Olivia goodbye before leaving for work. He responded to her messages during the day. He maintained peace. And that calmness gave him advantage. People reveal more when they think you suspect nothing. Inside his office, however, Sebastian was building a complete picture. Daniel had sent him deeper transaction records. The secondary savings account was not just a temporary holding place. It was structured. Funds moved in calculated stages. Smaller transfers first, then larger ones. There was even a consultation payment to a private investigator. That detail caught his full attention. A private investigator meant she was not only preparing legally. She was gathering information. On him. Sebastian sat still for several seconds after reading that line. He felt something sharp inside his chest. Not fear. Not panic. But the realization that the woman he shared 12 years with was building a case quietly. He asked himself one question: why? He had never cheated. Never hidden money. Never lied about his business. If she was preparing something, it wasn't because of scandal. It was positioning. And positioning usually meant assets. He called his attorney again and scheduled another meeting. This time, he brought printed records. Every transaction highlighted. Every date marked. The attorney listened carefully and spoke calmly. She is building financial leverage, he said. The timing of these transfers suggests she plans to file after securing liquidity. Possibly to request larger settlement claims. Sebastian nodded slowly. Can she succeed? The attorney paused. Only if you are unprepared. That sentence settled into Sebastian's mind like a clear instruction. Only if you are unprepared. He was not unprepared. Not anymore. That afternoon, he authorized a formal review of his business structure. Share distribution was adjusted legally. Certain investment holdings were moved under protected long-term agreements. Everything was done cleanly. Everything documented. Not hidden. Just structured. Because structure wins in courtrooms. Meanwhile, at home, Olivia's behavior became subtly different. She was kinder than usual. More attentive. She asked more questions about his work. She showed unusual interest in his upcoming contracts. Sebastian noticed. He answered carefully. Never defensive. Never suspicious. Just controlled. One evening, she suggested they go out for dinner near the waterfront. Candlelight. Soft music. She reached across the table and held his hand. I feel like we've been distant lately, she said gently. Sebastian looked into her eyes. He searched for emotion. There was emotion there. But behind it, calculation. Work has been demanding, he replied calmly. But I'm here. She squeezed his hand slightly. I just want us to be honest with each other. Honest. The word almost felt ironic. He nodded. I agree. And he meant it. Because honesty was coming. Just not the way she expected. The next morning, Sebastian received confirmation from the bank. Surveillance timestamps showed Olivia had met with a representative 3 separate times regarding account restructuring. She had requested advice about asset division scenarios. That information removed the final doubt. This was not emotional confusion. This was a plan. That night, Sebastian did something different. Instead of reviewing documents, he reviewed memories. He opened an old photo album stored in the study. Their wedding day. Smiles. Promises. Vacation pictures from Banff. A Christmas photo in matching sweaters. He studied Olivia's face in each picture. When did she start preparing to leave? Was there a moment he missed? Or had she been planning longer than he realized? The hardest part of betrayal is not anger. It is understood that someone you loved deeply made decisions without including you. Still, Sebastian refused bitterness. Bitterness weakens judgment. He closed the album and returned it to its place. The next step required precision. He requested a full asset trace from his financial team. Quietly. If Olivia intended to argue financial imbalance, he would present clarity. Transparency is powerful when you have nothing to hide. 2 days later, Daniel delivered another update. There's a draft document linked to the law firm, he said carefully. Preliminary divorce filing. It hasn't been submitted yet. Sebastian felt the confirmation settle deeply. So this was the stage they were in. Preparation. Timing. Anticipation. She was waiting for the right moment to serve him. Likely after securing enough liquidity to strengthen her negotiation. He thanked Daniel and ended the call. Then he stood up and walked toward his office window. The city below looked unchanged. But his marriage was no longer what it seemed. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel something close to sadness. Not weakness. Just sadness. Because despite everything, he had loved her honestly. That evening, Olivia was unusually quiet. She watched him as he removed his jacket. Studied his expression. "You've seemed distant," she said softly. "Have I?" he asked gently. She nodded slightly. "It feels like you're somewhere else." He held her gaze. "Maybe I'm thinking." "About what?" she asked. There it was. Curiosity. Testing. He responded calmly. "About the future." She swallowed lightly. "Our future?" "Yes," he said. She looked away briefly. And in that small moment, Sebastian saw it clearly. She believed she was ahead. She believed she controlled the timing. But what she didn't know was this: every move she made had already been recorded. Every transfer documented. Every consultation traced, but with certainty. Sebastian Cole Beaumont was no longer guessing. He was no longer hoping he misunderstood. The truth was clear. Divorce papers existed. A financial strategy existed. And the woman he trusted most believed she was one step ahead. But the quietest man in the room is often the most prepared. And Sebastian had just finished preparing. The moment Sebastian Cole Beaumont stops reacting internally and starts moving externally. Because knowing the truth is one thing. Acting on it correctly is another. And Sebastian was not the kind of man who wasted knowledge. Once he understood the full pattern. The law firm payments, the hidden savings account, the private investigator, the draft divorce filing, he became very clear about one thing: timing would decide everything. Olivia had not filed yet. That meant she was still positioning. She believed she had time. She believed he was unaware. That belief was now his greatest advantage. Sebastian did not confront her. He did not even change his tone at home. In fact, he became slightly warmer. Not fake. Not dramatic. just steady. He understood human psychology well enough to know this: when someone thinks their secret is safe, they relax. And relaxed people make mistakes. At the office, however, he moved with precision. His attorney finalized the restructuring of his company shares. Certain long-term contracts were locked under protective clauses. Investment accounts were rebalanced into instruments that were legally traceable but strategically secured. Nothing illegal. Nothing hidden. Just smart positioning. "You're ahead of the curve," his attorney told him during their meeting. Sebastian replied calmly, "I prefer to stay ahead of storms." He also scheduled a quiet consultation with a forensic financial analyst. Not because he planned to attack, but because he wanted complete clarity. If Olivia had moved funds beyond what he had seen, he wanted the full map. The analyst's report came back within days. The picture was clear. Over the last 3 months, Olivia had redirected funds in gradual stages. The structure suggested preparation for negotiation leverage. She was building liquidity outside the visible joint pool. When Sebastian read the report, he felt something shift inside him. It wasn't anger anymore. It was acceptance. This was no longer suspicion. This was reality. And reality requires composure. That evening, Olivia suggested they attend a small dinner party hosted by friends. Sebastian agreed. He wanted to observe her in a social setting. At the dinner table, she was charming. Laughing. Engaged. Warm. She touched his arm lightly when she spoke. She introduced him proudly. "Sebastian has been working so hard lately," she said with a smile. He smiled back. To anyone watching, they looked stable. Balanced. United. But Sebastian noticed small details. She checked her phone more than usual. She stepped outside once to take a call. When she returned, her expression was serious for a brief second before she adjusted it. Adjusted. That was the word that defined her lately. Everything felt adjusted. Measured. Calibrated. On the drive home, she spoke softly. "Do you ever think about change?" she asked. Sebastian kept his eyes on the road. "Change is constant," he replied. "Some changes we choose. Some choose us." She looked at him carefully, as if searching for something in his tone. But she found nothing. Because Sebastian had mastered stillness. The next morning, he received confirmation that the draft divorce filing had been updated. Still not submitted. But updated. That meant the clock was ticking. She was close. Very close. Instead of panic, Sebastian felt clarity. If she planned to serve him unexpectedly, he would reverse the surprise. Not by confrontation. By preparation. He met with his attorney again and laid out a simple strategy. "I want full documentation ready," he said. "In case papers arrive." The attorney nodded. "We can pre-file response frameworks." That's exactly what they did. Asset transparency statements. Income breakdowns. Business valuations. Everything organized. Everything clean. If Olivia planned to present a narrative, Sebastian would present facts. Facts win over emotion in structured rooms. At home, the atmosphere felt strangely peaceful. Almost too peaceful. Olivia cooked dinner more often. She initiated conversations about future vacations. She even suggested redecorating the guest room. It felt like someone trying to soften the ground before a heavy step. One evening, as they sat on the patio overlooking the quiet water, Olivia said gently, "You've always trusted me, haven't you?" The question was unexpected. Sebastian turned to her slowly. "Yes," he said honestly. She studied his face. "Completely?" "Completely." She looked away after that. And in that small silence, he saw something real for the first time. Not calculation. Not strategy. But doubt. Maybe she hadn't expected him to remain steady. Maybe she expected signs of weakness. Suspicion. Fear. Instead, she saw composure. And composure unsettles people who expect chaos. That night, Sebastian sat alone in his home office after Olivia went to bed. He reviewed every document once more. Every transaction highlighted. Every legal adjustment secured. He wasn't preparing for revenge. He was preparing for fairness. That difference mattered deeply to him. Because no matter what she had done, he refused to become bitter. Bitterness would make him reckless. And recklessness destroys structure. As he closed his laptop, his phone vibrated. A notification from the bank. A final transfer from the joint account to Olivia's secondary savings. Larger than the previous ones. He stared at the amount for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly to himself. This was it. The final move before filing. She believed she was ready. She believed she had secured enough. What she did not know was this: he had already neutralized her leverage. Legally. Strategically. Calmly. Chapter 4 ends with balance restored, not in the marriage, but in the power dynamic. Sebastian Cole Beaumont was no longer reacting to hidden moves. He had anticipated them. Matched them. And positioned himself beyond them. The stage was now set. Papers would come soon. And when they did, the surprise would not belong to him. On a quiet Friday evening. The kind of evening that feels ordinary on the surface, but heavy underneath. The sky outside their Oakville home was calm, painted in soft shades of orange and gray. Inside the house, everything looked peaceful. The lights were warm. The dining table was set neatly. 2 plates. 2 glasses. 1 bottle of wine breathing gently between them. To anyone passing by, it looked like a normal night in a stable marriage. But this was not a normal night. This was the night Olivia had been preparing for. And Sebastian Cole Beaumont knew it. He walked in through the front door at exactly 6:40 p.m., just like he always did. Navy suit. Calm expression. Controlled steps. He placed his keys in the same small ceramic bowl near the entrance. Routine matters. Routine keeps the mind steady. Olivia was already seated at the table. There was no music playing tonight. That was the first difference. The house felt too quiet. "You're right on time," she said softly. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tightly together on the table. Sebastian gave a small smile. "I try to be." He removed his jacket and sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt thicker than usual. Not tense. Just heavy with something unspoken. Then he noticed it. A large envelope resting beside her plate. White this time. Not brown. Neatly sealed. Official. Olivia took a slow breath. "Sebastian," she began, her voice measured carefully, "I think we both know things haven't been the same." He looked at her calmly. No surprise. No anger. Just attention. She continued, "I've been thinking about this for a long time. And I believe it's best for both of us if we move forward separately." There it was. The moment she had planned. The speech she had likely rehearsed. She slid the envelope gently across the table toward him. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she said quietly. "These are the divorce papers." The envelope stopped directly in front of him. Sebastian didn't reach for it immediately. He let the silence sit between them. Not to intimidate. But to observe. Olivia was watching him closely. Waiting for reaction. Waiting for shock. Waiting for emotion. Instead, he placed his hands lightly on the table and nodded once. I see. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. She had expected more. You're calm, she said, almost confused. Should I be shouting? He asked gently. She hesitated. No. I just thought that I wouldn't see this coming, he finished quietly. That sentence changed the air in the room. Olivia's posture shifted slightly. What do you mean? She asked carefully. Sebastian finally picked up the envelope. He opened it slowly, scanning the first page. His eyes moved steadily across the lines. He had already seen similar drafts through his attorney. Nothing here surprised him. Property division request. Asset disclosure demands. Financial settlement proposal. It was structured carefully. Strategically. After a few seconds, he closed the folder gently and placed it back on the table. Then he reached beside his chair and picked up a dark leather folder of his own. He placed it in front of her. Calmly. Precisely. Before we continue, he said, you should review this. Olivia looked confused but opened the folder. Inside were printed bank statements. Transaction histories. Dates highlighted in yellow. Transfers marked in blue. Law firm payment records. Secondary savings account details. Even the branch visit timestamps. Her breathing slowed. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned each page. Sebastian's voice remained steady. I noticed the first transfer 3 months ago. She looked up at him sharply. Yes, he said calmly. I've known for a while. The room felt smaller now. Olivia swallowed. You were checking on me? I was reviewing our finances, he corrected gently. There's a difference. She closed the folder slowly. So what is this? She asked. An accusation? No, he replied. It's clarity. He leaned back slightly in his chair. You prepared strategically. You moved funds gradually. You consulted legal advisors. You even structured liquidity before filing. That wasn't emotional. That was calculated. Olivia's eyes filled with a mixture of shock and something else. Perhaps embarrassment. Perhaps regret. I didn't think you'd notice, she admitted softly. That was your first mistake, he said, not harshly, just honestly. I work with numbers every day. Patterns speak. Silence filled the space between them. But this silence was different from before. This silence carried truth. Olivia's voice softened. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Sebastian studied her face carefully. For the first time in months, she looked real. Not rehearsed. Not measured. Just human. Then what were you trying to do? He asked. She hesitated. Protect myself. That answer landed heavily. Because protection implies fear. From what? He asked calmly. She struggled for words. From uncertainty. From feeling like I wasn't in control. There it was. Control. It had never been about betrayal for love. It had been about leverage. About security. About positioning. Sebastian nodded slowly. You could have spoken to me. She looked down. I didn't know how. He remained quiet for a moment. Then he spoke clearly. You assumed I would fight you blindly. That I would react emotionally. That I wouldn't prepare. She didn't deny it. He continued, I've already secured my business structures. I've already documented full financial transparency. I'm not interested in destroying you, Olivia. But I won't be cornered either. The strength in his tone wasn't loud. It was controlled. And control is powerful. Olivia leaned back in her chair. The confidence she had entered the evening with was fading. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Sebastian looked at the divorce papers again. Then at her. Now, he said calmly, we proceed honestly. No hidden transfers. No strategic surprises. Just facts. She nodded slowly. The power dynamic had shifted completely. The surprise she planned for him had returned to her instead. Not through anger. Not through revenge. But through preparation. Sebastian stood from the table and adjusted his cufflinks gently. I won't stop you from leaving, he said. But I will ensure fairness. He walked toward the living room, then paused briefly. You underestimated something important. She looked up. What? You thought silence meant weakness, he replied. It doesn't. It means patience. And with that, not with chaos, but with revelation. The papers were no longer a weapon. They were simply documents. Because the man they were meant to surprise had already built his defense. And when preparation meets strategy, the one who stays calm usually wins. With silence, not the kind of silence filled with fear, but the kind that comes after everything has already been set in motion. 3 weeks had passed since Olivia placed the divorce papers on the dining table and tried to surprise Sebastian Cole Beaumont with a future she believed she controlled. By then the lawyers were involved, documents had been exchanged, and financial disclosures were officially requested. The calm surface of their marriage was gone, replaced by structured meetings and professional emails. But what Olivia still believed was that she had positioned herself wisely, that the careful transfers, the staged savings, and the legal consultations had secured her leverage. What she did not realize was that leverage only works when the other side is unaware, and Sebastian had been aware for a long time. When the mediation process began, both parties were required to submit full financial transparency. Not summaries. Not selective pages. Full records. Every transfer from the joint account was examined, every savings account traced, every timeline reviewed carefully. Sebastian arrived at the mediation office in a navy suit, posture straight, expression steady. He did not look like a man walking into conflict. He looked like a man attending a business meeting. Olivia sat across from him, composed but visibly tighter than usual. The mediator, calm and neutral, opened the session by reviewing the submitted documents. The forensic financial report laid out the timeline clearly. Month 1 showed minor transfers to a secondary savings account opened under Olivia's name. Month 2 reflected larger structured movements aligned with Sebastian's quarterly business growth. Month 3 revealed a linked external account and additional liquidity positioning just before the divorce filing draft was prepared. The mediator paused and asked Olivia to clarify the purpose of the staged transfers. Her lawyer attempted to explain them as precautionary measures, standard financial security planning in uncertain marital conditions. But precaution usually involves transparency when dealing with joint assets. These transfers were not discussed, not disclosed, and not mutual. They were deliberate and timed. Sebastian did not interrupt. He did not defend himself emotionally. He simply allowed the documents to speak. Facts have a different weight than feelings, and in a room structured around evidence, facts move the balance. As the timeline was reviewed in detail, it became clear that the narrative Olivia's legal team initially prepared, one suggesting financial imbalance and limited access, did not align with the documented activity. The staged withdrawals appeared strategic rather than protective. The atmosphere in the room shifted slowly but noticeably. What had been presented as preparation now looked like positioning without communication. After a short recess, Olivia's lawyer requested a private discussion with her. Sebastian remained seated alone at the table, hands folded calmly, breathing steady. He did not feel triumph. He felt confirmation. He had prepared not to attack, but to ensure fairness, and fairness was now emerging through documentation rather than argument. When Olivia returned to the table, her confidence was softer, less calculated. The revised proposal from her legal team reflected adjustments, reduced liquidity demands, acknowledgement of documented transfers, acceptance of Sebastian's business restructuring as legitimate and preemptive rather than evasive. The mediator summarized the revised framework and described it as equitable. That word settled the entire process. Equitable meant balanced, structured, reasonable. It was never about winning for Sebastian. It was about not being cornered. The session concluded without raised voices, without dramatic accusations, without emotional collapse. The bank records had spoken clearly enough. That evening, Sebastian returned to the Oakville house one final time before formal separation arrangements were completed. The house felt quieter, not heavy but emptied of tension. Olivia stood by the window overlooking the water, her posture less guarded than before. When she turned toward him, there was no performance in her face. "I didn't think you would notice," she said softly. Sebastian placed his keys in the ceramic bowl by the entrance, the same routine he had followed for years. "I work with patterns every day," he replied gently. "I noticed the first one months ago." She looked down briefly, then back at him. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said. He believed her. "You were trying to protect yourself," he answered calmly. But protection without conversation becomes strategy, and strategy without balance creates conflict. She nodded slowly, understanding now what she had underestimated. She had expected emotion, expected confrontation, expected weakness. Instead, she found structure and patience. "I thought you would panic," she admitted. Sebastian allowed a faint smile. "I don't panic over numbers," he said. "I analyze them." There was no bitterness in his voice. Only clarity. 12 years of marriage had ended not with chaos but with documentation. The fairness of the outcome was not created in that mediation room. It had been built quietly over weeks of preparation, careful consultation, and controlled responses. "I'm sorry," Olivia said finally. It was not dramatic. It was sincere. Sebastian nodded once. "I hope you find stability," he replied. He meant it. Stability was what he had always valued most. Weeks later, the agreement was finalized. His business remained fully under his control, structured legally and transparently. Assets were divided according to documented contribution and shared responsibility. There was no courtroom spectacle, no public scandal, no emotional display. Just a signed resolution built on facts. On the first morning after Olivia officially moved out, Sebastian stood alone in the kitchen, sunlight entering softly through the large windows. The house was quieter now, but it did not feel broken. It felt different. He poured himself espresso and stood by the window overlooking the water. He reflected not on betrayal, but on awareness. Trust had been tested. Strategy had been revealed. And he had responded not with anger, but with preparation. He understood something clearly now: silence does not equal ignorance, and calm does not equal weakness. The strongest position is often the quietest one. Olivia had believed the divorce papers would give her control. She had believed the staged transfers would create advantage. But advantage disappears when the other side has already calculated every move. In the end, Sebastian did not defeat her. He did not expose her publicly. He did not seek revenge. He simply ensured balance. And balance, when supported by evidence, cannot be shaken easily. As he stood there watching the morning light reflect on the water, he felt neither victory nor loss. He felt resolution. The bank records had spoken, and he had listened early enough to respond with clarity. Sometimes the most powerful move in a conflict is not aggression. It is preparation. And Sebastian Cole Beaumont had proven that when strategy meets structure, calm always carries the final word.